Yo everybody, what's going on? This is Keegan from KmanCf Reviews. If you enjoyed this review, make sure you hit that like and the subscribe button, and if you have any opinions at all that you would like to share, make sure to leave them down in the comment section. BlaQ Chidori, White Melodies. BlaQ Chidori is an American rapper based in Virginia, a veteran on the channel now. I've given his music 3 dedicated reviews, the first being my initial exposure with his Black Fiction album, then the Ragnarok EP, and then his most recent EP in collaboration with HONCHO, Black Blood and Tears. All 3 reviews will be in links in the corner if you want to go check those out. And now I'm back covering him yet again, barely a month later with his latest album, one that he's been teasing for a good while now. Now it's finally here, White Melodies. And let's just jump right on in. What are my thoughts on White Melodies? Let's find out as I review it track by track. We will start with the singles, with there being 2 of them. The first being N-Words to Gods, featuring HONCHO, which presents a very serene, almost acoustic instrumental. There's some muted guitar strumming giving the beat some volume, plucky keyboards, a soft hissing of the percussion, and a condensed wall of chilly cooing. It's a familiar BlaQ Chidori beat, but I feel like there's a bit more of an organic bass to the song. Yet again, hearing these 2 MCs working together is such a treat. Thankfully, it's not the only one of its kind on the album, too. BlaQ goes first with a signature confidence, letting this lyrically dense verse just glide over the peaceful instrumental. HONCHO follows quickly after and has a much more bold charisma than Chidori. It's a very natural transition from one to the other, as these lyrics paint each MC describing their come-up in rough neighborhoods, their connections, their families, and I like how both rappers end their respective verses with them flexing a little bit, expressing this superiority they both feel. A perfect callback to the song's title. Great track. And the second and final single, Jesus Christ / White Savior, featuring Phil V, which has a much more traditional BlaQ Chidori beat. Soft, airy drums, a heavy, rumbling bass undertone, angelic, soaring strings, plus another group of background singers. Very soulful beats here, and I think is the perfect partner track to the first single. The song actually has a pretty cohesive structure instead of the typical style of just bar-for-bar verses. There's actually a hook to the song, and it adds an intrinsic catchiness to the track. BlaQ Chidori returns with that same cadence, very infectious and enthralling delivery, while Phil V has a slightly more in-your-face flow, but it's like that vibe of trying to force your point a little bit, not to the same extremity as HONCHO. Lyrically, and I might be horribly wrong with this, but my best assumption is how people so faithfully follow the preconception that Jesus was white, or how commonplace it is to portray Jesus as a white savior, while BlaQ Chidori believes that the only thing white about Jesus was his teeth. Regardless of that though, I absolutely love the song, one of my favorites. Now for the rest of the tracks. Opener and title track White Melodies is a 2-minute long intro which opens right away, setting the tone and theme of the record, featuring the jurors to Kyle Rittenhouse's trial and stating how he's not guilty on all charges. After about 16 seconds of that, we get this slow, lumbering instrumental. The bass bubbles under this shrill blanket of synth that add this emotional potency to the beat. Chidori's flow is, as always, amazing. It perfectly fits the passive vibe of the beat. Lyrically, what I get from this is that Chidori is rapping about how both sides are responsible for the halted growth of black culture, and how some have such a skewed perception of white people when Chidori outright says that there are also black devils out there. Really, I feel like I can't do these lyrics justice. Listen to this song yourself, an amazing open letter of a song, phenomenal wordplay, and a stellar opening song. Aryans and Dracos almost opens up in an off-putting way. The dizzy, spiraling melody almost sounds like some alien alarm before beautifully realigning into this normal, cohesive beat. It may be a minor moment of the song, but I just love how fluid it is. Anyway, this beat is mad dreamy. The synths glitter and glow just like shooting stars across a celestial night sky, but the bass is the most intense it's been on the record so far, and this juxtaposition is extremely gripping. Gotta give a massive shout out to Protagonist on production here. Amazing work. Also, wow, Chidori completely went off on this song. His flow is rapid, one of the fastest I've heard from him in recent memory. Also, Chidori tries his hand at a bit more of a melodic flow on the closing hook of the track, which is actually pretty solid. He doesn't try to go full-on passionate, overly expressive cadence, but just adding a bit more harmony to his voice, and I think it turned out well. Starbucks is a song in very typical BlaQ Chidori fashion, and I quite enjoy it, instantly kicking off the track by dismissing some of his critics or haters who says he's only got gun bars, which, at least coming from another critic, is the last thing I think about when I hear BlaQ Chidori. But I digress. He then encourages everyone to listen up as the beat drops, and when it does, it's very mellow. Very, very minimal percussion here, as the track prefers to let the bass and harmonizing group singers guide the main melody. As a result, Chidori is the driving force of the song, and him smoothly flowing over this delicate, almost ambient beat, you have no choice but to listen to him. And I gotta say, he's got some amazing bars on this track, as he raps more about his come-up, flexing a bit of his unmatched level of creativity, how bright he knows his future is, jewelry as well. A very gripping song. I like it. Donald Sterling, which is a 1 minute and 10-second interlude which highlights businessman Donald Sterling, who was the owner of the Los Angeles Clippers basketball team, and the racist and discriminatory statements made by him that subsequently got him banned for life from the league. Now, I'm not going to go into detail as to what he said. If you know, you know, but I feel like it's a very poignant move by BlaQ Chidori to include that on this album. Of course, it's not a track I'm actually willing to keep around, but if you want the whole album experience, this certainly leaves an impression. Tom Hanks is probably one of the most minimal and almost distant beats I've ever heard BlaQ Chidori on, even more so than on Starbucks, where in that track the bass was a lot more distinguished. Here, it's extremely subdued, like you wouldn't even notice it if you were just listening to the song casually. Of course, also no percussion here. The only thing about this beat that could count as prominent is the calm, heavenly cooing, which as a result leaves BlaQ Chidori in the burnished spotlight, delivering yet another gripping performance as he declares that this is a message to all the fathers in America, especially emphasizing the deadbeat fathers and how he wishes some men could just have a heart and show their kids some much-needed love. Unfortunately, this verse stops halfway through, leaving the other half to an interview with Tom Hanks, who has been labeled as America's dad, and how he dealt with neglect and abandonment in his childhood and constant emotional strife, and how he was so worried that his kids would feel the same way. Certainly isn't the strongest track to stand on the album itself, but again, in the context of the whole album, this is a phenomenal addition. Britney Spears, which, funnily enough, is actually spelled wrong on streaming services, trust me, that was not a typo. But regardless, it's an eerie, moody track primarily led by this isolated, reverberating guitar plucking, which alongside this quivering keyboard melody and pulsating bass give the track a spectral vibe to it. It's one of the most engaging beats I think I've ever heard Chidori on. So shout out to Sovereign who produced the song, really knocked it out of the park. Speaking of Chidori, his cadence really comes off like he's telling a heartfelt story instead of performing a song, and all those elements combined sure make for an engaging listen. Lyrically, the track deals with having people in your life you thought you knew, like your family, start mistreating you and not showing you the love you deserve, which correlates to Britney Spears through the infamous conservatorship and abuse controversy of Britney's father. I don't really need to dive much deeper into that, but this track is honestly fantastic. Action Bronson is another interlude almost about the same length as Donald Sterling, which actually features someone who I'm not familiar with. My best guess is Ghostface Killah because at the start of this interlude, the narrator introduces Action Bronson as someone who sounds like him, and I know Ghostface and Bronson have very similar vocal inflections. I can't say it's 100% Ghostface though because I couldn't find this exact clip this sample came from, so if I'm wrong, please correct me in the comments. But whoever it is berating Bronson because he's a bigger guy, so he resorts to how much Bronson eats, which almost seems petty and really childish. Especially now that Bronson has devoted himself to a healthy regimen, which is awesome, but the track does still add to the overall concept of the album. Both sides of the story featuring Know It All, the longest track on the record just being under 4 minutes, and it does not miss a beat at all in that runtime. Speaking of beat, I love this one. The piano flutters, ascending and descending continuously while being assisted by these immaculate strings lingering in the background, tender flute, plus the signature rumbling undertone of the bass. But that piano is such a unique feature and works with the strings to present an opulent vibe. Chidori switches up his style for the verse, bringing in an almost angry and blunt delivery. It's a fitting change-up from the smooth flows we've heard up to this point. Know It All comes through about halfway with a deep, rich vocal tone that almost sounds like I'm listening to Rick Ross, especially with the linear flow over the luxurious instrumental. Lyrically, I tried to piece this one together, but I'm pretty sure this track actually has both MCs firing back at each other, where the both sides in this case look at how both MCs handle this kind of beef, where Chidori goes right for the jugular, shooting from all sides, but Know It All seems to try to diffuse the situation. He's all about support and building bridges instead of burning them, and about not trying to figure out who's the better rapper. Love this dynamic, love the song too. Devolution featuring Mayo Nakili is one of the hardest bangers BlaQ Chidori has ever been on, at least in terms of the beats. Cause shit, this beat is hard. I love the clickiness of the hi-hat, the bass pulses with so much energy, and the synth melody really catches the ear. It almost sounds like a warning alarm, which is perfectly symbolic of these lyrics, especially from Mayo, who spits these bars about how humanity is so backwards, especially regarding racial equality, and how he gets looked as a criminal all thanks to historic oppression. Plus, just real world problems like student debt, the government overfunding the military, and police and drug abuse. A very lyrically dense song that I could not do enough justice, especially with how stone cold and serious Mayo delivers the track with. He knows the facts and is spitting them right there, minimal sugarcoating with play on words. It's a very real message, and you can really get into that vibe. Also, I gotta say, the mixing on Chidori's part is strangely quieter, and it almost sounds like a second vocal layer is on the track. All these elements jumbled together actually make it a bit difficult to hear what Chidori is saying. It's still a hard flow, but I know how amazing Chidori is at lyrics, so the fact that the mix is so hodgepodge is a bit disappointing. Nonetheless, I still think it's a good song. Sandra Bullock featuring Nadine Marbles, in complete contrast to Devolution, has one of the poppiest melodies I've ever heard BlaQ Chidori on. The tsunami of retro-tinged synths crashing over the mix, the drum work is very clean and accessible, and feels way more nurtured than the skeletal hi-hats you hear so often in rap music. And Chidori even raps over the beat in a much more rhythmic fervor. It's actually very catchy, especially to my pop-sculpted taste. However, Chidori is once again mixed quieter in the mix. The synths just wash right over him here. But as much as I want to feel like I shouldn't like it because of that, the song is just too damn catchy to outright shun from the tracklist. Plus, I'm assuming Nadine is doing the singing on the intro and outro, and she has an amazing voice. I just wish she was also pushed more in the mix. There's a lot of power in that voice, and to just have it flooded by synths, I just kind of wish it was more prominent. Like I said though, I still really enjoy the track regardless. Appropriated is another interlude. This time I have no clue where the sample comes from, but it seems to be about the host of some group quoting a book and stating that white people and white entrepreneurs were appropriating hip-hop and marketing it to black youth and how it was actually succeeding. But now this narrator is looking at it today and how there's no more gangster rap, but instead, now hip-hop is going to be taken over by, and I quote, metrosexuals, and how every single black boy in the hood is going to be wearing skirts and man purses in the future. Personally, I don't see that happening, if I'm being honest. Again, though, great addition for the album's concept. Tommy Egan, which is a remix of the original Tommy Egan from last year, which features JR. This song is named after a character from a TV series that I have absolutely zero knowledge about called Power, but despite that, I still found a lot to love in the song. The traditional Chidori instrumental returns with this oscillating vocal melody, minimal percussion, plus a legitimate slap bass. Instantly gives the song brownie points for me. I love slap bass. Chidori has a flexible charisma on the song. Near the beginning of his verse, he's slightly on the more aggressive side, but throughout the verse, that angle gets amplified until he's dishing out the same fire that he did on both sides of the story. Plus, hearing JR and Chidori together is always a treat, and even though his verse is short, I love his powerful delivery. He's mixed so far forward in the mix in comparison to Chidori, it's almost like shoving his verse directly in the listener's face, only making him more of a gripping MC. Love this track. Bow to the Man, which actually features production by fellow rapper Numbs, and I gotta say, such a phenomenal job in that case. He really plays to Chidori's strengths with this one. The background singer does an amazing job of setting the mood, plus the minuscule bass and delicate wavering guitar allow for a much more serene feeling on the beat. Chidori takes center stage, and I love his straightforward, punchy delivery, and the hook that has the slightest essence of melody behind it. It's another captivating song. Lyrically, I'm pretty sure this is just a flexing track, but mostly flexing his pen game and how he's got the knowledge, and I'm pretty sure the man to bow to in the song's title is Chidori himself, or even just the embodiment of the black man, although maybe I'm just looking into that a bit too deep, and it could just be a flex track. Either way, great song. Jeremey Bentham / Just Bars featuring Elzai and King James has a rather standard beat in general. I love the organic crashing percussion, the crystalline shimmering synth, and the buzzing bass. It's a very elegant instrumental, but the MCs go in on this track, especially Elzai, who certainly lives up to the Just Bars half of the title. King James also has an amazing performance, as I would have expected, but I'm honestly the most enamored by Chidori's unique and magnetizing flow. Very smooth, but delivered with a fiery cadence. I adore it. Lyrically, I feel like Elzai and James stick more on the Just Bars side, but Chidori does include a few bars related to Jeremey Bentham. The biggest one I caught were connections to how Jeremey was a massive advocate for animal rights. But aside from that, there's a lot of lyrical showboating here, and I really like it. Race Joke is just a brief 36-second interlude detailing a joke that his son was talking about with his mother. I'm not going to explain it too deep because I can't really say with the same level of conviction as the person who said it here. However, if I'm being transparent, I did get a chuckle out of it. Nicole Kidman is the only track on this album which gave me a vibe that this feels like a very long interlude. It doesn't have much structural substance in its 3.5-minute runtime. The track is bookended by 2 skits. The hook near the end is very slow and can get a bit repetitive. However, it's the verse that seems to be the zenith of the song. It's intricate, it's layered, it's actually got a bunch of connections to Nicole Kidman's ex-partners like Tom Cruise and Lenny Kravitz, with Chidori's rhyme schemes including subtle nods to Mission Impossible or Lenny Kravitz albums like Five or Black and White America. I absolutely adore this verse. It's one of my favorites on the record, and Chidori delivers it with an indelible swagger and confidence over the shivering melody, bass, and more background vocals. But the track doesn't give me too much else to return to on its own. Nicholas Craven featuring Patty HONCHO and Nicholas Craven himself is an amazing way to begin the final leg of this record. The beat on here is pretty alright, the percussion seems a bit overly compressed in my opinion, but the bass and background vocal melody are very enjoyable. The track is just non-stop bars after non-stop bars. Chidori opens up with some amazing lines. I especially love the "My rhyme's alkaline, every mineral in it is a gem" bar. Yet again, oozing confidence out of every syllable, and instantly followed by Patty HONCHO. So nice to hear him again, especially back to back with Chidori. Also having a killer rhyme scheme near the end of his verse. Nicholas doesn't actually rap on this track, instead he shows up in the beginning of the track to almost hype it up, telling Chidori to talk his shit. Amazing song here. And finally, the closer, Land of Nod Your Head, featuring Patty HONCHO, again closes out this album in typical Chidori fashion, with another mellow instrumental. I like the shrill synth melody laying claim to the track over the deep bass and muted drum work. One thing's for sure, that title is certainly correct, and I was definitely nodding my head along to the entire tune. Patty HONCHO opens up the track this time, and yet again I love his dominant style of rapping. Chidori's hook on the song is surprisingly compressed in the mix. It almost feels like it was recorded and mastered in a completely different studio than even his own verse, which, by the way, is another phenomenal verse, much like on Nicole Kidman, delivering a steady, relentless barrage, rapping about, as Chidori puts it, the truth, and how people seem so appalled when he does so. Which, I mean, I'm appalled, but more so how fucking good this song is. One of the best on the album, hands down. Overall, yet another home run by Black Chidori. I really enjoyed this album. Certainly not the kind of album you just want to sit down and vibe to. There's a lot to unpack here, really much more so than anything Chidori has done previously. The concept is well woven, the feature list is concise, yet still leaves Chidori as the headliner here, dishing out snappy and multi-layered bar after bar, and it's all done over a variety of smooth to banger beats. My one complaint about this record is due to the sheer strength of the concept. It leaves some of the tracks standing on an intrinsic weak leg in terms of individual songs. A lot of the time here, the songs do have longer skits, and that can really take a listener out of the experience if they want to just listen to one song. Thankfully though, this album still had its fair share of banger songs, so it's certainly not a complete hindrance, but some songs like Tom Hanks or Nicole Kidman that have amazing poetic writing can't really stand on their own. Regardless, if you can sit down properly and attentively listen to this album, it's certainly a gem. I'm feeling a 9 out of 10 on this album. Well guys, hope you enjoyed that review. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace!